It's the last evening of November 2016, the kind of night that doesn't look like it's hiding anything. Kampung Tunku, Petaling Jaya. A quiet neighborhood where streetlights hum, dogs bark in the distance, and windows glow with the soft blue of television screens. Inside one of those homes, Joshua Hilmy and his wife Ruth Sitepu are finishing dinner. They don't know it yet, but this will be the last night anyone ever sees them alive. Joshua was not a man who blended in. A Malaysian convert from Islam to Christianity, he had once been outspoken about his faith. But in recent years, he'd grown careful. He knew how sensitive conversion could be in Malaysia. Friends said he was thoughtful, articulate, and deeply private. Ruth, his wife, was Indonesian, warm but reserved. She stood by him through everything, through family rejection, through the quiet whispers that followed them both in church circles. Together, they lived a modest life in Kampung Tunku, renting a single-story house tucked behind a row of palm trees. The neighbors saw them often, kind, polite, always together. There was nothing unusual about that night, until 8:30 p.m. Around that time, one neighbor later told investigators she heard raised voices coming from the house. Joshua was on the phone, pacing, tense, agitated. The tone was sharp, almost panicked. The words weren't clear, but it was the kind of argument that fills a room. And then, silence. The argument stops. The house goes quiet again. Lights stay on, curtains stay drawn. Whatever that call was about, it would become one of the last pieces of evidence of their final moments. By 9:30 p.m., the couple steps outside. No luggage, no overnight bags, not even their phones visible in hand. They leave the lights on. The gate swings shut behind them. Joshua locks the door once, firmly, and gets behind the wheel of their car. The engine starts. The headlights wash over the narrow road, and then they drive off into the dark. That's it. From that second onward, Joshua and Ruth are gone. No CCTV footage, no witnesses, no one sees them reach their destination. By morning, their car hasn't returned. For 2 days, nothing seems unusual. The neighborhood is calm, but by the end of the week, their mail starts piling up. The landlord notices rent hasn't been paid. The curtains, still drawn. The lights, now off. A week becomes 2. 2 become 4. And still, no one reports them missing. No relatives come forward. No friends know where they are. Joshua's phone stops ringing. Ruth's Facebook goes silent. They seem to have simply vanished. When the landlord finally opens the gate to check, the scene inside feels frozen in time. Their shoes are still at the door. Joshua's Bible rests on the table. 2 plates, washed and drying in the rack. Everything neat, untouched. There are no signs of a break-in. No blood. No struggle. It looks less like a disappearance and more like a pause button had been hit on their lives. What could make 2 people walk away like that, without warning, without trace? Joshua wasn't just any man. His story was complicated. Born Muslim, he had converted to Christianity years earlier, a move that had drawn attention from religious authorities. In Malaysia, conversion from Islam isn't just a private act, it's a legal and social fault line. Joshua knew that. He had spoken about it in small circles, quietly mentoring others who faced the same crossroads. Ruth stood beside him, loyal, patient, and brave. To those who knew them, their love was steady. But behind that calm exterior, there were signs of pressure building. Friends later said Joshua had mentioned feeling watched. Others recalled him saying he might need to go away for a while. No one thought it meant this. If you're just discovering this story, hit subscribe. Because what happens next exposes a pattern that's been hidden in Malaysia for years, and it all starts right here, with the night Joshua and Ruth disappeared. By mid-December, the house feels abandoned. The landlord decides to wait. Maybe they'll come back. But January comes. February passes. The rooms remain still. When the missing persons report is finally filed, 3 months later, in March 2017, it's already too late. Every possible trail has gone cold. And what makes this even stranger, Joshua and Ruth weren't the only ones. Just days before they vanished, another activist, Amri, disappeared under eerily similar circumstances. And 3 months after them, Pastor Raymond would be abducted in broad daylight by masked men, caught on camera. Different lives. Same silence, same disappearance. It begins to look less like coincidence and more like a pattern. As the story unfolds, questions multiply. Who was Joshua speaking to on that final call? Why did they leave their house unlocked, lights on, and walk into the night? And why did it take the police more than 90 days to begin looking for them? No answers, just absence. The last confirmed sighting of Joshua and Ruth remains that short drive out of Kampung Tunku. No one has seen them since. No one has heard from them. And no one, not the police, not the government, not even the Human Rights Commission, has ever been able to say where they went. By the time anyone asked where Joshua and Ruth had gone, their trail was already cold. But as investigators would soon learn, this wasn't an isolated case. It was the start of something much larger and far more disturbing. It's March 6, 2017, 3 months since anyone last saw Joshua and Ruth Hilmy. Their small home in Kampung Tunku, once alive with quiet devotion and late-night prayers, now sits in absolute stillness. The curtains haven't moved in weeks. The mailbox overflows. The neighbors have stopped knocking. That morning, their landlord finally walks into the police station carrying a missing persons form and a look of quiet unease. He tells officers he hasn't received rent since December. The couple's phones have been unreachable. Even their car, the one they left in that night, is gone. At first, the officer on duty barely reacts. He asks the usual questions. Maybe they went back to Indonesia. Maybe they're traveling. But the landlord insists something's wrong. Joshua and Ruth were private, yes, but reliable. The kind of tenants who paid on time, who watered the plants, who waved politely every morning. That report marks the first official acknowledgement that something terrible might have happened. But when police finally visit the house, what they find doesn't look like a couple who planned to disappear. Inside, the air is thick with dust. Shoes by the door, laundry folded neatly in baskets. The refrigerator still hums. On a small table, half-read books, a Bible, a pair of glasses, and 2 cups left on the counter, as if they'd been interrupted mid-conversation. No sign of a struggle, no forced entry, no valuables missing, the kind of silence that feels arranged. The investigators write their notes, take a few photos, and leave. No evidence bagged, no fingerprint dusting, no urgency. But here's the part that unsettles their friends the most. Even after the report was filed, the police did nothing for months. No phone tracing, no public alert, no follow-up with family. It's as if the case dissolved the moment it entered the system. Meanwhile, those who knew Joshua begin piecing together fragments of his last weeks. Friends recall his growing caution, his tone on the phone, guarded, uneasy. Some say he mentioned being watched. Others say he spoke of feeling pressured to leave the country. Still, no one expected both he and Ruth to vanish without a trace. If you've been following Trace of Evil, you know, disappearances like this rarely start as random, and they never end without questions. So before we go deeper, hit subscribe, because what happens next reveals how silence can spread like smoke, everywhere yet impossible to hold. Back to the investigation. By April 2017, the landlord grows frustrated. The police still haven't updated him. He contacts Joshua's brother, who confirms the same. No contact, no leads, nothing. Ruth's family in Indonesia starts calling every embassy they can reach. No records, no border crossings, no immigration data. 3 months missing. And yet, no missing persons poster. No press coverage. It's as if their names were quietly erased from every file. Then, whispers begin. People in Malaysia's Christian community start connecting dots, because Joshua's disappearance didn't happen in isolation. In February 2017, just weeks after Joshua and Ruth vanished, Pastor Raymond was abducted in broad daylight by a group of masked men in black SUVs. The incident was caught on CCTV, professional, coordinated, precise. And a few months before that, in November 2016, Amri, a Muslim activist accused of spreading deviant teachings, had also vanished. 3 people. Different backgrounds. Same country. Same eerie silence from the authorities. Was Joshua's disappearance somehow connected? At first, it seemed far-fetched. But by late 2018, human rights groups started noticing a pattern. All 3 men had ties to religion, reform, and conversion. All 3 had previously been warned or harassed about their faith. Joshua, once a Muslim, had openly converted to Christianity. He led small prayer groups from his home, quietly but consistently. Some said his conversion offended powerful circles. Others said he'd been under watch for years. Whatever the truth, something or someone made sure Joshua and Ruth's voices would be silenced forever. By mid-2018, the public starts demanding answers. Where's the investigation report? Where are the search efforts? Why hasn't the couple's car been traced through highway tolls or license plates? No answers come. Instead, official responses grow vaguer. Still under investigation. No evidence of foul play. But those statements raise more questions than they settle, because how can there be no evidence when there's no investigation? The case quietly slips into the backlog, another line in a report, another couple lost to the shadows. And yet, a few independent journalists keep digging. One finds that Joshua had allegedly met with someone days before he disappeared, someone connected to a religious authority. Another source claims there were calls made to a number linked to an official department. None of it is confirmed, but every lead points in one direction, upward. The deeper they dig, the clearer it becomes. Joshua and Ruth didn't just vanish, they were erased. Still, there's no smoking gun. No CCTV footage, no witnesses, no body. Just two lives that vanished between phone records and paperwork delays. And so, by late 2018, the Hilmy case joins the growing list of disappearances that no one can or will explain. Their names are whispered alongside Amri and Raymond, a pattern of people who spoke or believed in ways that challenged power. And that's when someone decides to take the question the police wouldn't touch and make it public. Who benefits from silence? Because silence in Malaysia's most mysterious disappearances has always been the loudest clue of all. By late 2018, Joshua and Ruth's names appeared in a growing list of the disappeared, and someone decided it was time to ask the one question the police wouldn't: who benefits from silence? It's 2018, 2 years after Joshua and Ruth vanished. The case has gone cold, the police files thin, and the public mostly silent. But somewhere in Kuala Lumpur, a new kind of investigation is about to begin. For the first time, the Malaysian Human Rights Commission, SUHAKAM, announces a public inquiry. Their goal: to uncover the truth behind a string of mysterious disappearances. Amri, Pastor Raymond, and now Joshua and Ruth Hilmy. From the moment the hearings open, one thing is clear. This is not just about missing people. It's about a system that seems designed to forget them. Inside the inquiry hall, families sit side by side, faces tight, hands clenched, listening to testimonies that sound less like mistakes and more like patterns. Joshua's brother takes the stand, his voice steady but strained. He recounts the endless calls, the letters unanswered, the police visits that led nowhere. He tells them how he begged for phone records, forensics, even simple updates, and got only silence. Then comes Ruth's friend, a soft-spoken Indonesian woman who says she last spoke to Ruth days before the disappearance. She describes her as calm but nervous, like she was expecting something. Each testimony builds a quiet tension in the room, because what starts to emerge isn't just neglect, it's something darker. When investigators request official police documents, they find contradictions, dates that don't line up, reports filed months late, names missing entirely. One officer claims the case was opened immediately. Another says weeks later. Yet both statements are under oath. And that's when one commissioner quietly says what everyone's thinking. If the people meant to find them never even looked, what does that tell us? Across several hearings, SUHAKAM hears from friends, relatives, pastors, activists, all describing the same story in different voices. A vanishing, a report, a dead end. It's almost as if the same invisible hand keeps erasing names from Malaysia's conscience. The inquiry then broadens to ask why. Why do all these cases revolve around religion? Why is it that every name, Joshua Hilmy, Pastor Amri, involves people who challenge the boundaries of faith and freedom? Joshua's case is particularly sensitive. He was a Muslim convert to Christianity, something that in Malaysia's religious framework is controversial and dangerous. It's not just about belief, it's about defiance. If you're watching this and wondering how people can just vanish for what they believe, make sure you subscribe, because what you'll hear next will show exactly how power hides behind procedure. Back to the hearings. One witness, a former officer, admits that no senior investigator was ever assigned to the Hilmy case. Another reveals that phone records weren't even requested until after SUHAKAM began asking questions, nearly 2 years too late. Even the basic forensics, prints, bank traces, vehicle searches were never done. The silence wasn't an accident. It was engineered. In one particularly tense session, a commissioner asks, "Was there any communication between police and religious departments during the time Joshua Hilmy was missing?" The officer hesitates, looks down, then says quietly, "That information is not available." Gasps ripple through the room, because everyone knows what that phrase means. It's available but forbidden. Over months of testimony, the inquiry peels back layer after layer of procedural fog, and underneath it all finds a disturbing pattern of deliberate inaction. When the SUHAKAM team cross-references cases, a chilling realization emerges. The same methods, the same timeline, the same lack of follow-up. It's as if someone pressed copy and paste on every disappearance. By 2022, the findings are finally ready. And though the report stops short of directly accusing the government, it leaves little room for doubt. There's no evidence of official abduction, it says, but there is clear acquiescence. A word that means complicity without fingerprints, a silence that doesn't scream, but permits. The commission concludes. The police failed to conduct proper investigations, and their inaction amounts to a tacit acceptance of enforced disappearance. It's a sentence that lands like a hammer in Malaysia's public discourse. When the findings are released, headlines appear briefly, then vanish within days. The government promises to review the recommendations. The police issue a single statement, no further comment. But for the families, the silence feels louder than ever. Joshua's brother speaks outside the courthouse. "We just want to know where they are. Dead or alive, we just want the truth." And as he speaks, it becomes clear the inquiry didn't close the case. It only proved what the families already knew. Someone in power wanted Joshua and Ruth forgotten. Yet, if the system refuses to remember, then stories like this one, the retelling, the exposure, become the only justice left. The inquiry ends in March 2022, but no arrests follow, no files reopen. The trail that began in a small Petaling Jaya home ends in the marble halls of bureaucracy, sealed behind official reports and unanswered letters. And the most haunting part? Even with testimony, evidence and public hearings, Joshua and Ruth remain missing. When the findings were handed to the authorities, everyone expected answers. What they got instead was another wall of secrecy. It's 2022 and 6 years have passed since anyone last saw Joshua and Ruth Hilmy. 6 years since that quiet house in Kampung Tungku went dark. And now, after years of silence, Malaysia's Human Rights Commission SUHAKAM has spoken. But what they revealed was not justice. It was an absence, a void in accountability. A report that read more like a confession of failure than a promise of truth. The police, it said, showed elements of acquiescence. A soft phrase with sharp edges, meaning they didn't do enough, and maybe they didn't want to. Because here's the thing, when people vanish, the story doesn't end with their disappearance. It ends when no one is held responsible. And for Joshua and Ruth, that's exactly what happened. In 2023, pressure began to rise again. Families of the missing, Amri, Pastor Raymond and now Joshua and Ruth, united their voices. They demanded a transparent reinvestigation. They wanted names, accountability, and for once, answers. Parliament responded with formality, not urgency. The minister confirmed that the cases remained open, but open didn't mean active. No new leads, no new witnesses, no new hope. Behind the press statements, there was still a quiet resistance to act, still the same silence that swallowed Joshua and Ruth. And that silence, it wasn't empty, it was protective. It protected those who knew too much and punished those who dared to ask. In Petaling Jaya, Joshua's brother, weary, still searching, continued to speak to anyone who would listen. He recounted every unanswered call, every ignored letter, every official response that sounded more like an excuse. Meanwhile, Ruth's relatives in Indonesia were living in a different kind of grief. Not the kind that comes with death, but the kind that never lets you mourn because you can't prove it happened. Her sister once told a reporter, "We just want to know if they're alive or gone. We just want to know." 7 words, simple, human, pleading. But in Malaysia's landscape of disappearances, even that has become too much to ask. If you're watching this and believe stories like this deserve to stay alive, take 1 second and subscribe to Trace of Evil. Because in a world where silence wins, attention is power. Across Kuala Lumpur, human rights groups have kept the case alive, holding press conferences, demanding government transparency, linking Joshua and Ruth's case to the wider pattern of forced disappearances. Each time, the response is the same: we're still investigating. But the files stay closed and the memories fade. Behind the scenes, the families of all four missing figures, Raymond, Amri, Joshua and Ruth, share one unspoken truth. They are bound together by the same wall of secrecy, and if that wall ever cracks, if even one truth gets out, it could bring the whole system down. So maybe that's why no one is talking. Maybe silence isn't just negligence. Maybe it's strategy. Today in 2025, the Hilmy case still stands unsolved. No arrests, no confirmed sightings, no trace of their car, not even a single verified call since the night of November 30th, 2016. But that doesn't mean nothing happened. It means something did, and someone wanted it buried. Joshua, once a Muslim who converted to Christianity, had already been warned before his disappearance. He was told, "You're playing with fire." He had faced harassment, scrutiny, and the quiet threat that shadows every convert in a nation balancing faith and fear. And when he disappeared, with Ruth by his side, it was as if that warning became prophecy. Because in Malaysia, faith can be freedom, but for some, it can also be a sentence. By late 2024, the question was no longer what happened. It was how many more need to vanish before someone admits the truth. Human rights organizations like SUHAKAM and Amnesty International Malaysia keep issuing statements. They call for an independent task force. They remind the government that disappearances are not just crimes, they are human rights violations. But the government's tone remains careful, measured, as if words themselves could be dangerous. And maybe they are. Because acknowledging what happened to Joshua and Ruth means acknowledging a system that allows it to happen. In the quiet suburb where they once lived, the house on Jalan SS1 Tow is still there. Different tenants now, different lives. But sometimes when night falls and the street goes silent, neighbors say the place still feels paused. Like it's waiting for someone to come home. Their photos, worn, fading, once shared across Facebook, now live in digital archives, carried forward by strangers who refuse to let them be forgotten. If stories like this matter to you, don't let this be the last time you hear their names. Subscribe to Trace of Evil and help us keep the light on in the places where truth was taken away. The story of Joshua and Ruth Hilmy isn't about disappearance alone. It's about what vanishes afterward. The trust in institutions, the faith in justice, the belief that truth always finds its way out. But maybe that's where we come in. Because if silence is the weapon, then remembering is resistance. Only a question left hanging in the air: how many more must disappear before silence becomes the crime?